Hello, everyone. We're back. So we had some technical difficulties earlier if you joined us, but we're back, and I think everything's working now. And so I have the author, number one author in the world, Mark Victor Hansen. He's author of books like Chicken Soup for the Soul, Aladdin Factor, 1 Minute Millionaire, Power of Focus, and Ask, the Bridge from Your Dreams to Your Destiny, behind me. And he has come to share about books and writing books. And really, our topic today is the power of sharing your story, the power of connecting and actually being able to share your thoughts, your words, your ideas, your inspiration with people to make a difference in the world, or to change the world, or to create lasting change in generations. If you think back from life and from what you've learned in life, everything comes from a book. I mean, now we're in the digital age and a lot of things are consumed online, but it all bases from a book. Books are the foundation of knowledge. And so with me, I'll bring up my guest and speaker today, Mark Victor Hansen. Welcome, Mark. Great to have you today.
My pleasure being with all you. And what Preston said is correct. Everyone has a story in them, a message in them, a book in them, and insights in them, and wisdom in them that needs to be released and expressed. And a book makes everything else in your life multiple times better. I know that, having sold over 500 million books, 318 of them, or co-authored them, or authored them. And I want to help you pull out the book in you. You got three basic choices, and we'll open it all questions. But number one, you could self-publish, which is done and is a good idea. Number two, you can go to a major house. It used to be 8 houses. This week, it turns out that Random House is buying Simon & Schuster, or trying to, for $2.2 billion, which is a brand new deal. And you got lawsuits against them by the federal government because that's antitrust. You got guys like Stephen King, who writes the horror stuff, suing him, and he's with both houses just like I am, and saying, hey, you don't want to consolidate because it cheats authorship, it cheats world distribution. So we're in an interesting time at the big house. The third way is you do a hybrid press, and I own MarkVictorHansenLibrary.com with my wife, and we are trying to make sure the publishing industry is still available to people who can afford to invest a little and get a whole lot. With that, I give it back to you, Press, and we can do any questions you want, or I can wax on poetically, or if somebody comes into the chat and writes in a question, I will do everything I can to answer it. And if I can't, you will.
Absolutely. So, so we'll take, live questions. So if there's anyone out there who wants to ask a question directly to Mark, now's your opportunity. You can type in the chat. We'll watch for those questions and we'll bring them up live. But I want to dive into some of these ideas about writing a book. Now, I run the Formula EQ Academy, formulaeq.com. We do mindset training, the emotional intelligence training. And before we started here, I had some questions that were based around people's fears, people's concerns about writing a book. And so I wanted you to kind of talk about, some of those things and address, how people can think about them or overcome them, and so a lot of times people have the fear of rejection. So they feel like they're going to have their thoughts put out in the world, and, their idea is just going to stink, or maybe it's just average, or, so what do you say to people, that have that?
Okay. So philosophically, fear is faith going the wrong direction. It's a one-way elevator going down. It's you being negative about you not believing in you. And so Preston and I are here to say, hey, look, if you don't believe in you, let us believe in you until we build up your self-esteem, your self-awareness, your self-acceptance, your ability to tell your story, because everyone's got a story. Now, back to MarkVictorHansenLibrary.com, if you aren't competent to write more than 5 or 10 pages, we will listen to your ideas, your philosophies, your thoughts, the principles that you believe in, and then we will interview you and we will help you ghostwrite the book. And ghostwriting, 90% of all books in the world are ghost written. All the presidential memoirs just about are ghost written by somebody else, in case you didn't know it. And a lot of the major celebrities are ghost written books. So ghost writing is an art form. It's a skill. And what we write is irresistibly complimentary writing. And what happens is once you got a book, especially if you have a marketplace or a way to build yourself, a book is the best business card you can ever give. You give a business card, the minute you walk out of the office, it goes in the cylindrical container called a garbage can. If you give a book and you sign it to the wife, the husband, the kids, I even said, look, jokingly, when I'm with only one or two people at a time, I'll gladly sign it to your dog if you want. You know, and they'll go, oh, that's funny. They go home and they read it and they go, wow, this guy has something to say. And then they hire me to the company or hire me as a consultant or an advisor. And it is, books have been the most wonderful tool and pathway to the greatest life and lifestyle I could ever have imagined. And all I want to do is make that available to people who want to have a book. It just is a wonderful opportunity that is legacy value opportunity, because if you're even writing it just for your own family and your biography, or in that case, your autobiography, or you're writing somebody else's biography, and they print 100 copies for the next 5 generations, that is a wonderful, great gift in the future. So there are lots of things. So all you got to do is do what Napoleon Hill wrote for the FDR tracks: confront your fears and make it disappear. And we're here to help you do that. And fear is faith in the wrong thing, like I said. So let's confront our fears and make them disappear. Next question.
I love that, faith in the wrong thing. You know, people, they have these fears and they're just limiting beliefs. You know, there's a common belief. You hit a lot of different ones. So, you know, there's the fear of criticism. There's the fear of not being good enough. There's and the fear of inadequacy. But also, too, you know, one other thing, it's like one of the subconscious fears, is that fear of success, of being that front person, too, you know, that some people have. You know, so you mentioned ghostwriting. You know, tell me more about ghostwriting. How is, because this is one thing that I have people ask all the time, is they're like, yeah, I don't have enough time, you know, but I want it to be my book. So, like, how is ghostwriting their book still?
I'm going to go to ghostwriting second. I will answer, I promise. But I want to go back to what you said, is a fear of inadequacy. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to hold up a mirror. You get to look in it. You're enough. Just being alive, you're enough. You've got something to contribute. You've got a destiny code. And the world's enough. And there's enough need for what you've got. Whatever it is, there's a need for it. Now, what ghostwriting is that you tell us what you want written, and then we write it. And we make it as not only as good as you could be, but better, so you grow into your own self-awareness. Mine is self-awareness. Who do you want to be? What do you want to do? What do you want to have? Where do you want to travel? What do you want to see? How large would your life like to be? And a book helps you do all that, so you have a level to go to self-expression, then you go to self-mastery, and then at the higher heights you get to self-realization, which is a whole spiritual dimensionality of you. But ghostwriting is, you tell us what you want, we talk it through for an hour, we write up a synopsis, we send it back to you, you got to okay it. And the way we sign our agreements is you got to okay it in a week. You can't. Some people in the original think, well, I would like to wait 2 months and think about it. No. If we're going to do a book, we're going to do a book, and we're going to do it and make it wonderful and be the thing that will advance you in the sweet now and now. So we give you feedback every week. You've got to say yay or nay. We're on path or we're off path. And the 2 kind of paths you can take are, number one, you can do nonfiction, which is where I've made my fortune. But in the last, since we started this company in January, I've discovered that the real big sales is in fiction. So we can take a nonfiction, let's say you got 3 principles to teach, we put them in a fiction book, we wrap it, and the sales are 10,000 to 1. And our executive editor, Carol McManus, is glad to send out the release on that. It's sort of a mind blower to me, but the fact is, everybody likes fiction, and nonfiction books, basically, according to the newest stuff, get first 10 pages read, and then the people quit. And I want you to have books that are read, started, finished, like Chicken Soup. And then in just a Chicken Soup line, we've had prequels and sequels. There are 254 books in that thing. And like I said, I wrote 318 books. I don't want you to have any book that you're only going to write 1 book. I would prefer you to understand that you're going to wake up your mind, wake up your self-awareness, wake up your self-expression, wake up your self-mastery, so that you really contribute. And it's what I think the smart president ever was Thomas Jefferson. But Jefferson said, If my candle of awareness is lit, yours isn't. You light yours and mine, doesn't take anything from mine, but it makes the world fourfold brighter. Well, ladies and gentlemen, the goal right now is to take the bushel off and let everybody be infinitely brighter, lighter, wiser, more insightful than ever. And the only way that can happen, like what Press was articulately, eloquently stating when we began, in case some of you are just coming on now, is it somebody out there that's desperate. They're hanging on by their fingernails right now for your story. And you can't even know who that's going to be. And because I've been doing books now for 47 years, a little hard to believe for me, it's just gone like that. I get letters every day from people that said, you changed my life, you saved my life, I didn't kill myself because of you. It's that one story that did it, that one idea, that one technology, that one technique. And then the way you get over it, the other thing you asked about is fear of rejection. What we're teaching in the book, the bestseller we have out right now is called Ask, The Bridge from Your Dreams to Your Destiny. And we're teaching this book, what you got to do is say, somebody rejects you, and Jack and I got 144 rejections. You got to say N-E-X-T, next, because somebody out there will buy whatever it is that you've got to sell. Back to you, Press.
Thank you. Yeah. All right. So our next question I got here was, tell me about writing under a pseudonym, or why do people write under pseudonyms? What's the purpose of pseudonyms?
Oh, I love that question. A pseudonym means a false name, a fake name. And a pseudonym has a lot of real reasons. In nonfiction, where we were on 50 million Diet Coke cases for 6 months with Chicken Soup for the Romantic Soul, and our friend Youre Roberts wrote Hidden Riches, a great book. And we raised enough money to get 15,000 kids and boys and girls clubs. Well, Nora was such a prolific writer, and publishers, when I came into the business, would do one book every 2 years. One book every 2 years. That's, and then a writer isn't making any money until a book sells, and then they get the money 6 months late from the major houses. We pay a little bit faster than most of them. The point is she had to do 4 pseudonyms to make it. Stephen King had to do multiple pseudonyms to make it. Youre Roberts, I remember one of her pseudonyms because we were sitting in New York and Coca-Cola was giving us a great award, and it's J.D. Robb, and it's the people didn't know it, but they fell in love with J.D. Robb, read everything J.D. Robb. Well, it was little Youre Roberts writing, not little. She is a great writer, and she writes how many words a week? She doesn't even compute. She writes it longhand on a yellow pad and writes. I'm doing this off the top of my head, so I think the number is 52,000 words a week, and so she finishes basically a book every month. And she was just too prolific, and she's channeling brilliant stuff that is almost not needing editing. I remember, she just barely graduated high school, found out that was her talent. I'm telling all of you got some writing talent, and you didn't know it. There's a second reason to do a pseudonym. We have 2 people publishing with the Mark Victor Hansen Library right now that are doing. We want all our books to be impact books. That means if you read them, you're going to have a transformation. It's original information, and it's true, and it's helpful. But we're having people push the edge of the envelope at levels no one ever thought of pushing the edge of the envelope, like in human trafficking, like in changing the political atmosphere, like in changing the medical world into the health world. And because the health industry right now, 18% of our gross domestic product is going into probably sickness care, and we got a couple of people now that we're writing books with that are writing into wellness care, and they're all going to go under pseudonyms because they don't want to be attacked by big pharma, they don't want to be attacked by FDA or NIH, so that's a whole different rationale. And then we got another guy who is a special ops guy who for sure has done all the stuff that you've seen in Born Identity and all the stuff you see on Lee Creech's book, Lee Child's books. And what happens is because he has done that, been there, had to kill people on behalf of the government that he worked for. It's not an American government. He has to write under a pseudonym. And no, he won't go out and do the publicity, but I promise you the books are riveting. Like I say, all of you have a compelling, irresistible story, and what we want to do is help you pull it out. Did that answer to the pseudonym get a bigger level than you expected, Chris?
That was great. That was great. I love it. I love it.
And I didn't reveal any of the names. It was. And by the way, if Preston asked me if I ever thought we'd be doing people with pseudonyms, I would have said, well, why would we do that? I want to write under Mark Victor Hansen, and I want my wife, Crystal Dwyer Hansen. Why would anyone write under a pseudonym? You do a pseudonym and save your little butt so it doesn't get hung.
So, all right, this next question is, what is the most difficult part of the writing process? So what's the most difficult?
I've been doing this so many years, everybody says every part of it's difficult. It's difficult to come up with a title. It's difficult to come up with a message. It's difficult to come up with an irresistible idea. It's difficult to see the end from the beginning. It's difficult to go out and sell. But most people would say, because most writers are quiet, they're shy, they're a little bit introverted. So, and that's why Zig Ziglar, who was totally introverted, you know, ended up selling 10 million copies of See You at the Top, which originally had a crummy title. For some of you old enough to know who Zig Ziglar was, he was a great sales trainer and a product promoter, but a best book salesman for the platform. I mean, he would start holding one of his books in his hand and talk his whole talk through for an hour, and then sell 10,000 books outside at the big PMA Positive Mental Attitude rallies we did. But Zig was totally shy and introverted. On stage, he was one person because he reconformed his mind as an introvert to be an extrovert on stage. And then once he's off shade, he wanted to disappear, right? Other than sign a few books and goodbye. So what was your question? I think I over-answered it.
So, yeah, no, let's see. It was, what's the most difficult part of the writing process?
Yeah, so somebody's going to say every part of it's difficult. I happen to think we're going into, let's talk about where we are today. The book industry has transformed totally in the last 2 or 3 years, thanks to COVID confinement cocoon. And bookstores have gone from 19,000 down to 400, which is dreadful to me. I love the book people. I love the people selling books. I love the bookstores. I've never been unhappy in a bookstore. Jack and I, when we were selling 15 million books a year for year in, year out, would go into books and we'd sign every book they had of ours. And when we started, we visualized like our shrine to, there's a guy named, he wrote grabber books, Stein, his name was Stein. I wrote kids horror books and he had a shrine to Stein with like hundreds of his books and he crashed out one a month. And we said, someday we want a shrine to Chicken Soup. So we had a lot of books to sign when we showed up at Hudson or Books A Million or Barnes and Noble or back in the old days, Borders. But some of those stores are gone. And what I'm saying is we're finding out we're doing new innovative marketing. Like I'll just tell you one, the third biggest wine company in the world. I talked to the head of it yesterday, another Horatio Alger Award winner like I am and happened to be in my class. And I said, look, we were on the side of 50 million Diet Coke cases for 6 months. Nobody's ever tried to wrap a book with a bottle of wine, and you guys sell more bottles of wine than anyone in America and third most in the world. I said, wow, that is like a colossal, and it's going to sell their wines, of course. I said, of course. And we're going to do this great story, and we're going to write it for you. And they said, wow, what a good idea. So it will go out hundreds of millions. And we got the world's biggest shoe guy writing with us, a guy that created Reebok and created aerobics with Shaq Shaq O'Neal when he was 17, and Jane Fonda and Richard Simmons. He does a million pairs of shoes, and we put order forms in shoes, and people say, well, why would you do that? If you do 1 billion and you just sell 1% of them, you just sold 1 million books. When I told him, he said, I'm a niche marketer like you are. I love the idea, Mark. And so what I'm saying is that the people that say this is the withhold, I would write a book and I know I got the story, but I don't know how to sell it. If you're smart enough to write a book, the most powerful thing you got is you got a brain, which is inventory. You got a mind, which can think, and it has 2 parts, intuition, which you got an intuition, you got to do a book, and then imagination, and imagination creates reality. And Einstein, my teacher, Bucky Fuller's teacher, Albert said, imagination is more powerful than fact. And it is, because the fact was the world was flat, at least from a perspective of all those people. And we're pretty clear now it's not flat.
There's still a group that thinks it is.
Yeah, pretty clear you couldn't go to the moon. But I'm friends with all the astronauts that went to the moon, like Buzz Aldrin, who I think you've met with me and stuff like that. And these are human beings that are alive, and we're helping the kids now to go to the moon. But, Elon Musk is going to take us all to Mars because he wants to colonize space. And he's the richest man in the world with $6 multi-billion-dollar businesses. And we just had our accountant here, and the accountant said he's got a billionaire client, and the IRS, when they audited one of his 6 clients, this client who lives in the neighborhood here with us, said to him, I can't even do one business, and I'm an IRS guy. You shouldn't have that many businesses. There must be something immoral about it. There's nothing immoral about it. Just one guy is a wonk. One guy is a employee and has what Robert Kiyosaki would say, he's made himself a slave, right? The other guy says, I'm going to be an entrepreneur and I'm going to solve problems, fix them, charge for it, and get paid. And it's voluntary. The people don't have to buy whatever you're selling. Nobody has to buy a Tesla from Elon Musk, but nobody had to buy an iPhone, and yet almost the whole world has one. But now Tim Cook stole Elon Musk's best people, and our friend Elon Musk didn't shout. He said, Timmy, I think you made a big mistake. So he's created a new phone called the Tesla Pi 314, as you remember in mathematics, 3.14. And it solar charged. It's supposed to come out a couple of weeks ago. He's always late on his stuff. But you solar charge for 2 hours, goes for a week. I'm going to write a book with Elon Musk, I promise you that. But it gives you 2 terabytes of information, and it costs half as much as an iPhone. So if I were Tim, I'd be going, oh, baby, I done made a mistake hiring 5 people to do my car. Ladies and gentlemen, what did I just do? I told you a story that for the most part, at least the people I tell a story to on a day-to-day basis on podcasts have never heard that story, because they don't watch I watch everything Elon Musk does, because I love to hang around genius minds, because I love genius thinking. And what I'm saying to you is, you've got genius in you. My teacher, Bucky Fuller, said you were born a genius, and you got unplugged going through life by somebody being negative and saying, don't ask all those questions. Teacher saying, just sit there, implode it, and then write it out, and we're going to pass you or graduate you. And then you went into military perhaps, or you went to business, and they said, just do what we tell you. No, real thinking is thinking bigger, better, stronger, bolder, more imaginatively. And the best way to wake up your mind is start to write a book with us, or let us help you write a book. Press, back to you.
Yep. So the next question is, what are the most important elements of good writing? So which element?
I think that I'm going to do the biggest word in mathematics, tutological. Tutological means self-evident. The more Stephen King's book on writing says, the more you write, the better you get at it, especially if you have somebody editing you once in a while. Remember, with 318 books, I've had everybody edit me. My wife edits me, the editor edits me, the owner of the publishing houses that I'm with edit me. So I'm pretty used to having my stuff chipped away. And let's talk about that, because some of you say that's a negative. I don't want one word I changed. Anyway, you think about it. Well, I've been to Florence, Italy 3 times. I hope you haven't been. You put it on your bucket list and you go. But we can argue about who the greatest sculptor and artist of all times was. But one of the guys up there, if not the best, I think he's the best, Michelangelo. And I bought his book. And Michelangelo had 2 major artist sculptors turn down this marble because it had 2 flaws in it. He sees this marble, but he sees the David in it. Now, you know the story of David and Goliath. That's who we're talking about. And if you haven't seen the sculpture, it is the most perfect sculpture in the world. It took him 2 years, and they say, Michelangelo, how you make it David? He say, I chip you out everything that's not David. And you and I are got to chip you out all the bad writing so you get to great, inspiring writing that is compellingly irresistible reading. Like when I read novels, and I read a lot. Here in my library, I've touched at least 50,000 books. I haven't read every one cover to cover, but highlighted, circled, wrote notes in most of them. And we have no less than 2 or 3 books arriving a day, because I'm so big into business. People think, oh, well, if Mark touches it, it's going to make it. It's sort of like touching Jesus, the hem of the garment, you'll get well. Well, your faith has made you whole, pal. I can't touch a book and make it successful. You got to make it successful in your imagination. That's the point. And you got to have fun with it. You got to love the process, the whole process. Back to the last question you asked, Russ. I happen to love the process, and we want you to fall in love with the process, and we will help you with it. We'll hold your hand. We'll make you feel secure and all that if you want to work with us. Otherwise, if you're doing it alone, you can read my book, which is rocking now. You have a book in you, and lead your story at its path to success, and then shot football. Sir, Press.
Nice. All right. So the next question: What
Yes.
what comes first, the plot or the characters?
Well, first of all, we're talking about fiction. unless we're writing nonfiction, then you're the character, right?
Yeah.
Assuming you're writing it from your expertise in leadership, your expertise in sales, your expertise in accounting, your expertise in finance, your expertise in entrepreneurship, whatever. You're the character. Those two got to be, I would say, the plot, and then you put in all the characters. Now, in our book, Ask, every book we do has to have three principles. It's got to be original, unique, and transformational, and inevitable to the reader. But we start on Ask. The first story is A Fable of Michaela, which is definitively fiction, because being of Danish descent, I grew up thinking everybody had little blue eyes and blonde hair, and I live in little Denmark, Waukegan, Illinois. But we all grew up reading in Danish, the 147 stories when I could learn to read, by Hans Christian Andersen, and that was a stretch for me because I had to switch to English ultimately, and I had reading, remedial reading from first grade to sixth grade, a whole different story. So I can come out of that and become world's best-selling author. Think what you can do, because you probably don't have that kind of handicap, or maybe it was a handicap asset. In any case, Hans Christian Andersen always started with the plot, and then wrote these, and you've seen every one of them on because Walt Disney went with the guy I wrote a book with, Art Linkletter, to Denmark, and saw The Little Mermaid, but collected all 140, Ugly Duckling, Cinderella. I can name all of them, but that's not the point. The point is, he always started with the plot, and it was so irresistible and so compelling because he wrote the story of every man, which with every story you tell, we'll put it in the story of every man. So everybody that reads it, it takes ownership of their mind. It takes ownership. It'll be a two-story story, a story within a story. Is so compelling that it's called a page turner. They can't stop reading it. And all of you, whether you're reading Dan Brown, or whether you read Clive Cussler, or whether you read Danielle Steele or Nora Roberts, or if you're big into Shakespeare or you're into Plato, you start to read. You go, wow, this is great. It's like when my little daughter was in school, she read Plato for the first time, and she comes to me and says, "Dad, I'll bet you never read the Republic." I said, "Really? You don't think I know about the cave?" And she was just blown away that I knew the whole story. Of course I read it. I was going to be a Platonic scholar because I thought he was so, Plato started all education in the world. And I think everyone ought to read Plato. It comes from Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, to Alexander the Great, who created the first library. I'm creating the third library, of course. He created Alexandria Library, which is one of the places I want to go when it's finally safe to go to Egypt. Story you expected, I'll bet. So the plot and the character have to together. I'll just tie that up, put a bow on it.
All right, we've got one more question, then we'll wrap it up for today. And I'll end with this. And this is a 3-in-1 question, but I think you can handle it.
Thank you.
So, how many books have you written? Which is your favorite, and why?
Okay, the first one, 318 so far, and we got about 5 in process right now. Favorite is a tough thing. It's like you got 3 kids that I love, and which one of your kids do you love most? On any given day, if a kid's done something bad, like they break a window with a baseball going through it or something, you may be mad at the kid, but you still love the kid. So, and I obviously hit a ball through one of the windows in our house, and my parents weren't too happy with us. My brother blew up a little gift. My mother had been given a sort of a waterfall thing in the back of the house with a cherry bomb when we bought them for 25 cents each in prehistoric days. And that really flipped my mother out because that was a gift she'd always wanted my dad to spend. Today it would have been equivalently like $3,000 to $5,000. And he just thought, he wanted to know if cherry bombs blew up. So I love every one of the books I've written. If I had to have a favorite, it'd have to go in a zone. It's a hard question, but the Chicken Soup series starts with the original Chicken Soup, which I think everyone's got to read. And the most read story in that book is probably the millionaire teacher who could not read, Johnny Corcoran, who I met. It's a great, great story. And yesterday, the richest guy in Michigan, who's totally illiterate foreigner, wants to write a book with us. And I said, God, you're a billionaire, and you You can't read. This is like so amazing. I said, it's like Johnny's story, and I need you to have somebody read it to you. And they did. Anyhow, so that's that in this 1 Minute Millionaire, the purple and yellow behind me. And it's a trilogy. It's that, and it's Cracking the Millionaire Code, and it's Cash in a Flash. It touches me because that book is 2 books in one. Left brain tells you 24 things you got to do to your left brain to get rich. The right brain is a true story of a lady who's 60 years old who gets fired by Perry Como. She's his top singer, but he said, "You're old and you're fired." And she was good looking. She was in great shape. She's our dear friend. She came to the seminars with Bob Allen and I are teaching money. And we took her in 90 days from zero to hero. So she made a net $1 million. So that's actually her story. We had to put a pseudonym in her to use a pseudonym. The third part of the question was what, Preston?
Why?
So why do I write books?
No, why was that book your favorite? Yeah, but you kind of answered that, I think.
Yeah, so. I think I intrinsically answered it because I think we're in the ishiest time in human history, economically speaking. We unequivocally, Crystal and I now, I've had 20, 30 accountants work for me, CPAs and CFPs and all that, and CFOs. But we got the brightest right now. He happens to be really well off. He only does really well off people. You never know by looking at him. He comes here in a t-shirt. He just did the biggest bicycle race in Utah, up the toughest mountains, up to the top, and did really well in his age group. He's 10 years younger than I am, 64. But the point is, why is it he would agree that we're going into the shakiest time ever, even though you can't see it, because the government keeps printing money, which makes it even worse. You're going to have inflation and deflation simultaneously for the first time in history. That's going to be serious. And the government claims one level of inflation. Economic stats, go on your computer and look it up, says it's way, way higher than that. Well, what that does is that if it's really at 20%, which is what they say, 22%, that means in 5 years, your $1 that you have today is zero. So if you got $5 in the bank, you're going to have zero net worth in 5 years. So you got to put it in assets that appreciate, which is why I think my teaching money now, and more importantly, entrepreneurship, where you're creating bona fide assets that appreciate, not depreciate. Right now, our accountant said most credit cards are 90% overdue. That's a depreciating and expanding cost. So that's not like a good thing. And credit cards keep raising their rate. They lie. They don't ever take it down. So, and you could refinance it. Like Jim Rohn said, I finally paid off that I owed this guy $10,000. So I got 10,000 pennies. I went into the place that took you a little hard to pay bills and made it into one big impossible to pay bill. And I took bags of pennies and I poured it all over his desk and took pictures just to prove that I'd done it. And it said to the bank how many pennies it was. And he said the guy was furious, but he did the guy. He took a little impossible to pay bill, made it big, a little hard to pay bills, and made it impossible. But Jim outthought him, which is, if you go on YouTube right now, this whole money thing I'm teaching, the big video you got to watch that's the best watch I've ever done, I think, is how to out-inflate inflation. And it's all thinking, because there's a level that you could work twice as hard, or maybe you can go from working 40 hours a week to 80 or 100 hours a week. And long term, you burn out, you get exhausted, and it's not like a perfect program, right? Because I believe you ought to have a full life and a full lifestyle, a nice family, spiritual growth, all that stuff. But you need to know how to become a money master. You need to know how to become a master asker. You need to know that when you write a book, you're going to figure out how to market it, like we've been talking about very little today. But, I'm going to do a new thing about 12 ways to market that no one's ever thought of before, just because I've got them. I keep creating them because you ask yourself, how am I going to market something that no one's ever marketed before, and marketed bigger, better, and bolder? Sorry, I got hiccups. You will do it. You say, I don't know if I can do it, and I'm scared. You shut your mind down. That's why one of my big YouTube watches is, are you being expressed, or are you depressed? If you're depressing yourself, you're shutting yourself down, you're stifling yourself, you're detouring. If you're expressing, you're full of life and joy, exuberance. And that's where I want to live, and I plan to live, as you know, to 127th options for renewal, because Genesis 6:3 clearly says, thou shalt live 127th healthy, happy, buoyant years. Good enough for Moses, good enough for me.
Yeah.
You wrote that, by the way.
I love it. I love it. Well, and it's a thought that creates your reality. And epigenetics is real, and that's the stuff that we teach at Formula EQ Academy. But that wraps up, I think, for today. So thank you, Mark, for joining us and teaching us and enlightening us, sharing your lifetime of an incredible authorship journey. And so for people who are looking for help and want to share their story with the world, you can get help from Mark. You can actually have Mark help you and coach you and guide you and join. So you can go to hanseninstitute.com/books, and you can check out all the services that Mark has and the resources that Mark has, and become a part of the master author group and share your story with the world. So thank you so much for joining us. And to everyone out there, we love you and we appreciate you. And we'll see you next time. Have an amazing day.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.